Two banker boxes that are right there, these two binders, and the two case files that he's holding right there all belong to just one financial crimes investigation. Does that happen a lot? Yes.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Inside JSO, and we're here to talk about something a lot of people have been concerned about for a long time, and it continues to be a serious issue plaguing our communities. So we're talking about scams. There's a lot of them, you hear about them, but what do you really know about them to prepare yourself and your families? So we have a panel of experts today, and I mean experts. These are law enforcement experts who are talking about this issue, can really shed some light. I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves first. Let's start with you right at the end, please.
I'm Detective Cloud with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. I'm assigned to the Financial Crimes Unit, and I'm a task force officer with the US Secret Service.
You, sir?
My name is Michael Helsby. I'm a financial analyst with the United States Secret Service. Prior to joining the Secret Service, I retired as a financial crimes detective out of Lexington, Kentucky.
Great. You, sir?
My name is Adam Schaefer. I'm with the United States Postal Inspection Service. Been so for 19 years, and prior to that, I was a police officer for the Orlando Police Department.
Hello, I'm Daniel Dunn. I'm an ASAC for the FBI here in Jacksonville. I oversee our criminal investigations, including our white-collar crime squad, which sees a lot of the scam cases that we're going to be talking about today.
Very good. So we're hearing from a plethora of agencies. One thing I really want to get out there is how do these agencies work together to tackle this issue? Can anybody shine some light on that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the FBI values our partnerships. We work very closely with our state, local, and federal partners, including our international partners. And so when you look at these cases, they cross several jurisdictions, several boundaries, and the partnerships are key where we're able to come together. Each of us brings certain resources, certain capabilities, and when we work together, we're able to provide more. We're able to help the communities more and provide that safety for everyone. And so I think that while sitting here at this table, I think every one of us have worked with each other before and with the other agencies who aren't represented. And it's important that we continue to have that communication so that we can help our communities.
So first off, I want to talk about types of scams. You hear about types of scams, bank imposter scams, tech support, sextortion. That's just to name a few. Does anybody want to go through what ones you're really seeing more prevalent? Would you like to weigh in?
So the ones that I would say that JSO is seeing more frequently right now is definitely our tech support scams, our cryptocurrency fraud scams, and our romance scams. Those are the ones that we get reports on pretty much every day with our agency.
And it really goes to show you how vulnerable people can fall victim to these. When you mentioned romance scams, you see those, you hear about those, and they really affect a lot of people. Can we also talk about international borders? Do some of these scams cross over international borders, and can anybody elaborate on that?
Yes, we are seeing lots of scams originating internationally, and we're seeing lots of U.S. dollars flow across the borders of our country, which makes it difficult for us when we're investigating these scams to sometimes recover the funds because they land in areas that don't recognize legal process from the United States. So as scams have changed over the years, they started with smaller dollar amounts. Now we're seeing elderly victims and victims of all ages lose their entire life savings, and the money is going internationally on many occasions. And it's devastating to these people. We're losing generational wealth to any of these scams that are listed on the page.
Are those people able to get their funds back? Or I imagine if it's possible, it would be a huge undertaking. How does that work?
So it is possible. We do recover lots of money for these victims, as is the FBI and Postal. We have mechanisms in place in order to attempt to regain the funds quickly. But that also depends on how quickly the victims report this to law enforcement. We're seeing across the board that a lot of victims wait 2, 3, 6 months as the scam continues. And by the time law enforcement get involved, the money has moved so many times it takes a longer time to trace. And by that point, the criminals have usually moved the funds to an area where it's much more difficult for us to recover.
Yeah. And if I could add on that, so it is extremely difficult to get the funds back, especially as was mentioned if some time has passed. But I think this is why this topic is so important, and that we talk with our friends and with our family about being careful to make sure you don't fall victim to one of these scams, because although everyone at this table, we're going to work extremely hard to get the money back for the victims, we can't always do it, right? It can be very difficult. And so we'll do everything we can, but really prevention is the best measure, and just don't send it over in the first place.
And a lot of these victims are embarrassed. They're shameful. They don't want to talk to their neighbors about it. They don't want to share it with family. And by the time family gets involved, like you said, the nest egg, the savings have been depleted already, and it's already passed through multiple sets of hands, through different mules and whatnot. So a lot of times we're finding out from the law enforcement side of it months after it happened, and that obviously makes it a lot more difficult to recover the funds if we're able to at all.
And that's really sad to think about. I want to talk about one thing that's really we're seeing and hearing about a lot. It's kind of a buzzword right now. AI, right? I see you nodding.
And I see this more so with our romance scam victims. And that's one of the things that I know that he had touched on. I think for us that they need to realize at any point in time, if these individuals start to ask for money, I think you need to realize at that point in time, this is not real. A lot of technology has increased so much. It's helped us as well as hurt us with regards to the fact that some of these victims think that the individuals they're talking to are real people. And that's not always the case. Sometimes the images are generated. Sometimes they've taken images off of other people's social media and used those images, which is one of the reasons why I think it's important for anybody that has social media to make sure your social media is locked out. It's on private setting. Not everybody has access to that. And I would also make sure you have two-factor authentication set up on your social media pages, just to make sure that no one has the ability to get into your page. I think with regards to AI and how they've gotten individuals to really, and we see it all over social media with regards to videos that are created. People think that these are real life scenarios, including like somebody shows a video of AI where they think that even with regards to law enforcement and using images of law enforcement, thinking that this has happened, they've saved somebody's life this way or something like that. And most of those aren't even real. And I think it's kind of hard for the everyday citizen to understand what's actually real when you look at that and what's actually not real. And I think that the biggest thing for us with regards to romance scam is for them to actually understand at any point in time, because I feel like when it comes to our romance scam and our elderly victims, sometimes when we got these in the beginning, they were so quick to get you to start asking for money. Sometimes they build these relationships for a year before they ever approach you to start sending them money, just to build that trust with you, for you to know that they are in fact a real person. And more often than not, they're not. And they're not even locally. They're almost always overseas. And the money that you're sending is almost always going overseas.
See, what you just described to me almost sounds like grooming in a way. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
These scammers rely on confidence, right? They want the victims to have confidence in who they're talking to. And AI makes it very tricky because they can make it sound like they're anybody, make it look like they're anybody, and they're very good at what they do, and they'll manipulate it to build that confidence over time, that relationship over time. And so AI is going to continue to improve. These scammers are going to continue to use it more and more. And so it's something that you have to be careful for or watch out for. Another thing that we see is they won't meet in person, right? So if you have a relationship with somebody, but you never meet them in person, they keep avoiding ever meeting you in person, it's a good chance that they might not be who you think that they actually are. And so I think having those conversations with friends and family, and kind of knowing who they're interacting with, and seeing, hey, is it just somebody that they met online that they think they know, but they don't really know? Dig into that a little bit more, take a step back. And as soon as they ask for money, that's another pause, right? Anytime they ask for money, or maybe they guarantee a return on investment with no risk, like that's another red flag. That doesn't exist, right? If there's a guaranteed return on investment with no risk, and it's somebody you just met online, it should cause you to take a pause.
And or they're even asking you to send checks. They'll send checks to you to put into a bank account, and then ask you to send the money to another account, or they'll ask for access to your bank account so they can just forward it out because they don't want you to have to worry about it, type of thing. But AI has even gotten to the point when it comes to like our jury scams and things like that, or bonds, where they're changing the voices to where it sounds like really a family member. So you really think it is a family member that's really calling you asking for bond money. And even when it comes to like missing jury duty, pretending to be law enforcement, those are also a lot of them being generated with regards to AI.
It definitely speaks to the effort that they're willing to put into this. Did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I have a good example. I had a victim not long ago come in and report that she was a victim of fraud. She'd lost almost all of her life savings and sold her house to send money away. And during the interview, I asked her, I said, why would you send all this money, millions of dollars, to someone you don't know? She said, well, I do know him. We've talked every day for a year on social media and texting and calling. So this lady, she was a widow, she was lonely, and this person that she had met online started a relationship with her, and she believed it to be a real relationship. So when we tell people not to send money to people they don't know, the grooming, as April brought up, they feel like they do know them. So they're not sending money to strangers, they're sending someone money that they've spoken to for 3, 6 months, a year.
I'm so sorry to hear that that happened to this victim. I think that really speaks to the predatory nature of this and how they're preying on vulnerable people. She was a widow and all these things. So that's an example to keep in mind. That's a real story right there. I want to move on to the topic of money mules in the US. We've heard that term before. For somebody who may be watching, can you explain what that is and that it actually happens more often than people realize? So if somebody could elaborate, I want to learn about this myself. How about you, sir?
Typically, what we see on the postal side, money mules are either knowing or unknowing participants in laundering or moving funds from point A to point B, and the funds can be U.S. currency, they can be gift cards, they can be money orders, and what we see is multiple times after a victim mails money or some financial instrument, it goes through multiple hands before it eventually makes its way to the actual the criminal element. Unfortunately, a lot of these people are told to take an amount off the top. They're told to keep, X amount of dollars or, X amount of money or gift cards in return for doing their part in moving the money. And typically they're also scam victims. So we'll have the victim here in Jacksonville, for example, and we'll interview them, and they sent the money by whatever means, wire, cash, to another person. When we started looking at that person, that's a legitimate person who lives somewhere else in the United States, and they're also typically elderly. When we reach out to them, they mailed it to another person. So you have multiple steps, and it's difficult for law enforcement to be able to, with the amount of scams going on, to track down every single movement of money. And we have had luck in the past. Our agency has, along with the partner agencies, it's called Operation Jolt, which involves online telemarketing scams that originate in Jamaica. We have personnel in Jamaica that liaison with the National Police there and other HSI and other agencies. We're able to recover a lot of that. We're able to indict a lot of Jamaican nationals who participate, as the main scammers. But as you can imagine, like we're talking about with the shame and the embarrassment, a lot of victims never report it. They go through their life savings, and by the time we find out about it or are able to do something about it, it's been too far to be able to recover anything. So, but the mules are either knowingly or unknowingly participating in this laundering that is depleting these victims' accounts of what's in there.
Could they face charges for something like this?
They can. Our agency, for example, and I know other agencies do issues through the U.S. Attorney's Office cease and desist orders. So we've had a couple, unfortunately, elderly victims who, even after being provided with prevention tips, education, warnings, they still fall victim. And if the assistant U.S. attorney feels that the person has sufficient knowledge and warning, they can face criminal charges.
My goodness.
The money mules seem to be contacted in the same way as the victims who end up losing their savings. If the scammers contact someone who doesn't have assets, doesn't have a large nest egg, they still utilize them as a money mule. If they do have a large nest egg, then they take their large nest egg and then potentially turn them into a money mule later down the road.
Right.
So the scams start the same way, whether you end up as a victim of a fraud or you end up unknowingly muling money for the scammers.
Wow.
And we've seen cases where one of the mules, the secondary mule, was a victim of a work-at-home scam. So they think they're working for a logistics company, mailing these checks, moving this money, working in payroll, and the original victim might have been a victim of a romance scam. So it's like a multi-level and different. It's not all romance scams. It's not all work at home scams. So it's a very intricate kind of network where they're able to move the money from mule to mule or victim to mule and so on.
It sounds like a very sophisticated network is at play here. That's frightening to even think about. What would you say to something like this from the FBI side?
Yeah, I think you need to look for some of the warning signs as well. And for example, as mentioned, the work from home scam that they have, which it turns into the money mule, to where you're now committing a crime, right? You could be charged with wire fraud, bank fraud, a number of things. A couple of red flags to look out for if you get a job where you're working from home, but the people that are employing you, they're using maybe a Gmail account or a Yahoo account, or it doesn't appear to be work related. They're asking you to open up personal bank accounts and then put money into your personal bank account and then fund it to somebody else. Those are red flags that, okay, hey, you could be involved with as a money mule, and you're helping facilitate these scams. Essentially, the premise of it is the scammers want to distance themselves from the victims. They don't want to handle the money or interact directly themselves with the victims. And so they're just adding layers in to facilitate this, to protect themselves. Obviously, we don't want to fall victim to that, and potentially these individuals could face crimes as well. So just look out for those red flags of, hey, this doesn't seem right. Maybe you get hired for a job and you don't have a clear position description, right? You don't know exactly what you're going to do, but they just say, open up a bank account, put money into your bank account, and then funnel it over here. You're likely falling victim to this scam.
Wow, that's very frightening to even think about. One thing I do want to talk about is our data. Our data is everywhere. Phone number, email, it could be online for jobs maybe, but once that information is out there, it's really hard to keep tabs on it. It's kind of out of your hands, so to speak, and you cannot keep track of who has it. I mean, that's just a fact. So to avoid being on a scammer's radar, do you have any tips, any advice, any thoughts?
Everybody's information is out there. You're going to get scam phone calls. You're going to get scam texts. I get them on my work phone. I get them on my personal phone. They utilize robo-dialers, so any number can be called. The best advice we can give is just don't answer those phone calls or answer those text messages. There's no reason to answer a phone call if you don't know the number. We have voicemail, text messages. If it's a lot of the scams start with, hey, a name, are you here yet? Which is obviously a phishing test to get you to answer and say, sorry, you have the wrong number. And then they start a conversation with you. So if you just don't answer those phone numbers or those phone calls, they may, you're not going to be able to talk to anybody. You're not going to talk to the scammers. You're just going to ignore it. As far as your credit and whatnot, your social security number, there are ways to protect yourself with that as well. You can freeze your credit when you're not utilizing it, so no new credit can be opened. You can check your credit reports. You can check your bank accounts. We have apps for everything these days. So I have an app for my credit cards, my bank. Every time it's used, I get a text message telling me that my account has been used for whatever dollar amount you set. So you can watch your credit, you can watch your accounts. There's tools to watch everything. And if you do those, it'll make you as safe as can be with your information being out in the public.
Yeah, the scammers want the lowest hanging fruit. They want the easiest targets. So they don't like to work too hard to get the information. Like you said, all of our information is out there. It's out on the dark web. It's in a dumpster behind a medical office that's throwing away files. I mean, the information is just we have to mitigate and help our families and friends and neighbors mitigate any to make ourselves more of a target. If we can eliminate as many possibilities or make it harder for the scammers to use our information, that's what we have to do, and that's what we can do to try to prevent more fraud, more scams.
Yeah, and also the information that you put out there on social media. I know this was touched on earlier, but be careful with what you put. If you're mentioning, you got a grandkid, Timmy, who's going on vacation to a foreign country, a scammer may see that and then reach out to you and say, hey, we're the police in whatever country Timmy's been arrested. They need money so that he can post bond. Like, that's a pretty common thing. And so be careful with what you put out there. You're going to get the random the text messages. I'm sure we all get them where it's, hi, how are you? Just don't reply to that, right? Or if you get a text message trying to pretend that you're they're the bank, or whatever it is, don't reply to those emails, don't reply to those text messages, don't click on any links that might come in those. And that's a big one. And then just be careful what you put out on social media.
And it is very tempting to put out what we want to put out on social media. You mentioned the grandkid, the birthday, things like that. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind, that these predators are out there to take advantage of your shared joyous moments or whatever information you want to put out. So I want to talk about a public online account, since we're on that topic. When a person posts some very personal info, what are some examples of scammers using, say, that specific information to get you to fall into a scam? You mentioned the grandkid, but does anybody have any other examples?
I'm even going to go off of what he just mentioned as well, especially what we're seeing at JSO frequently right now. So the one thing that I would say with regards to social media is the fact that we even have people that people get requests all the time to be friends and stuff like that. If you truly don't know these people, or just because they're friends with somebody else that you happen to know, don't allow them on your page, because you really don't know who they are, and you're now giving them access to your information. I would say one of the biggest things that we're seeing right now that we get reports on probably weekly at JSO is the fact of the bank scams. People getting phone calls or text messages of people claiming to be their bank saying, hey, we've got fraud on your account. Hey, did you make this purchase in California? We see that there's a charge for $10 at this location. Is this an actual legit charge? Are you in California? I tell everybody, I'm not saying that there's not a potential that's not your real bank, but I would tell you always listen to what they have to say. If you want to say, yes, I appreciate you giving me that information. However, I'm going to call the number for the bank that I have myself, and then call the number on the back of your card that you have for your bank to actually say, hey, I just received a phone call from you guys. Did you guys really call me in reference to this? Because a lot of times those guys get so convincing that you realize you're giving out so much information. And one of the things that we're seeing right now is where our victims in Jacksonville are actually believing these individuals and placing their debit cards under their doormats or in mailboxes right now and saying, hey, the bank's going to come by and pick that up. We'll give you another one. And at that point, you've already given up your PIN number to your debit card, and they're emptying out your bank accounts. So that's the other thing that I would tell you. It really could be your bank. It could be fraud. Maybe your card got skimmed somewhere. However, don't answer the individuals. Don't respond to any text messages that you get from those individuals. Just call the bank yourself with the number that you have. Your banks are available to you pretty much 24/7. Call them and ask them, hey, was this you calling me, to verify? And please do not put your debit card in a mailbox or underneath your doormat. No bank is ever coming to your house to pick up your debit card.
We've had cases where the victim receives a cold call from a bank. They look at the number, they do their due diligence, and what the suspects do is they spoof the actual bank number. So, looks legit. They Google it. That number is the phone number for whatever financial institution, and everything looks like it's on the up and up. But then they're asked to do something silly with their debit card or the bank card. And that's where you think common sense would prevail. But the victim believes that they vetted it. They believe that this is, legitimate. And then this is maybe a new way that the bank handles debit cards. We might look at it not as kindly or not as favorably with that procedure. But the victim, it's not like they're getting a call from some unknown number. It is the bank's number. So the suspects are able to spoof that and then trick victims, and basically eliminates their ability to vet it when the number does come back to the bank.
And that speaks to what she was talking about, was just say, okay, that sounds good, but let me hang up and let me get out my card and call that number myself. Yeah, and that just eliminates the issue right there. And then you find out what is legitimate and what's not legitimate. But it goes to show you, again, how far some of these people are willing to go. And I think that's really frightening to think about. So information is power. But, we briefly touched on it with the money mules, but victims can also catch charges in a scam. Is there anyone who wants to weigh in on that and what that could actually look like?
Well, a lot of that comes down to, obviously, their level of involvement. If they're knowingly participating, we'll have mules where we, through our investigation, we identify that they're in contact with the targets in, let's say, Jamaica, for example, and they're a part of the scam. And they're probably the last person to touch the money or the funds before they're transferred to Jamaica or whatever foreign country. That being said, the mules that our agency has investigated before that were initially victims, They're provided a cease and desist. They're provided with legal paperwork that basically says, you know, you are participating in money laundering or wire fraud. If you continue to do so, you are subject to criminal prosecution. And a lot of times, again, these people are contacted after we contact them and provide them with this, and they still continue to participate. You would think that a visit from law enforcement and documentation, showing them that they're victims and showing them that they're participating in a scam would stop that behavior. But a lot of times, unfortunately, it does not, because they get contacted by another scammer. They fall victim to another type of scam or even a similar scam. So unfortunately, sometimes that mechanism is used kind of as a final way to stop the bleeding.
And I think for us as law enforcement, I think the victims need to understand if law enforcement is approaching you, telling you that you need to cease and desist, you need to take that seriously, because we're also hoping that you're not running out, you're not using all of your retirement, all of your money in your bank accounts, because ultimately when you run out of money, it goes back to what Adam was saying. Either one, they're going to turn you into a mule to help other people that have the money, or two, they're just going to stop all communication with you because they're not getting anything else from you at that point in time. And by the time you realize that, you have nothing left. And that's what we're trying to prevent from happening to you as a victim, to where you're not selling your house to get more funds to give to them, because we don't want that to happen here in reference to our victims.
For sure. And, scams, they destroy credit, they destroy lives, they can destroy relationships. We've talked a lot about the elderly, but there are lots of demographics that can fall victim to this. So can we shed some light on that?
College kids, high school kids with the sextortion, all the way up to our elderly population. IC3, which I'm sure he'll speak about later, is a great website, and they put out a great report at the end of the year that breaks down the loss and the reporting for each age group. And it's a very interesting read at the end of the year. And I can let him touch more on that. But we're seeing victims of all ages. It's the scams just change depending on who they're talking to. And you asked about social media earlier. I don't know that we've ever seen a scam that's directly tied to any one post that someone has made. But if you think about it, they put their pictures of their cars, their wealth, their homes, their birthdays, their family members, their kids, their trips. So they use all that information that you're putting online to develop the relationships that we're speaking about. So they know if you like checkers, that they'll talk to you about checkers. If you like wine, they'll talk to you about wine. But everything on your social media, they use to act like they know you, to have common interests with you, and to build a friendship and trust with you.
And they'll also use that information to, especially we see with the elderly victims, they'll go on Google Maps, they'll go on social media accounts, and if the person believes that they might be a victim of a scam, the suspects, the true criminals, will reach out to that victim and threaten them, saying, "I know that you drive a blue, sedan. I know that you live in a yellow house. I've got people that live in your neighborhood. If you don't send me the money, then this will happen." So, that is all part of the social engineering, involving social media accounts and whatever information the victims share. They're basically cultivating that to be able to build a profile to exploit the victim more, threaten the victim into participating in the scam. And typically we see that deployed when the victim starts, pushing back, or starting maybe friends or maybe law enforcement says, "Hey, you're a victim of the scam," and they're still not sure. A lot of times the suspect will reach out and try to convince the victim, like, "Hey, if you don't continue sending us money, this is going to happen to you." So we see, and the more information you share on social media, obviously that's more the engineering process that scammers use to kind of squeeze the victim into, sending money.
Yeah, as Mike mentioned, we've talked a lot about the elderly being targeted by these scammers, but the youth, the younger generation, are definitely being targeted as well. We see college kids, high school kids, junior high kids being targeted, especially through the sextortion, where they may claim to have compromising photos, or maybe the victim sent compromising photos to the subject, and then they start demanding money afterwards, where they're going to release the photos to to their family, to their friends, to everybody. IC3 was mentioned. That's the FBI's Internet Crimes Complaint Center. It's where we track. We encourage everybody, if you think you are a victim of a scam, you go to ic3.gov. So the letter I, the letter C, the number 3.gov, and you can submit complaints there and you kind of detail what the crime was. And then they track those stats. They track the scams that come in. Focus just on the sextortion from 2024 to 2025. IC3 is seeing a 60% increase in sextortion scams. So we see this more and more coming in. Last year in 2024, there was over $1 million lost reported in Northern Florida of these victims who fell victim to this scam and then started sending money, hoping that it would keep from their photos being released. So it's a serious, talk with parents, grandparents, but also talk to your kids as well and make sure that they're aware of what risks are out there.
I'm a mother of a young son. He'll be a teenager before I know it. So when I hear something like this, it makes me want to think about, God forbid something like this happens to him or one of his friends. If this person says they have these things, don't be ashamed. Go to us, go to law enforcement. Can you spread that message to all of us?
Yeah, absolutely. And the scammers are relying on the fact that you're scared, you're ashamed, you're afraid to talk to anybody about it, but you're playing into their hands. So, bad news doesn't get better over time, right? It's best to deal with it. If you feel like you've fallen victim, it can be difficult, but have that difficult conversation. Go talk to somebody you trust and get to where you can address it right away.
I would actually add on that to where I would say that with what we're seeing here locally regarding those cases, I agree with Dan in the fact that these kids don't understand the things that they send out through social media or actually through the internet regardless. It's not gone. And I think they need to understand that. I understand things have changed over the years with regards to technology and things that kids do nowadays with regards to sending photos out. And it goes back to one of the things that we had talked about even earlier with regards to AI. Chances are the people they're talking to online isn't the person they think they're talking to. And once those images are out there, it's a little more difficult for them to be controlled. And the last thing I would want is a child to not go to as difficult as it's going to be, go to a family member, call law enforcement, go to a teacher, anybody that you think you can trust about that, instead of taking that on yourself, because they're going to keep going and giving that to you. As long as you keep giving them money, they're going to keep asking for the money to take from you in reference to as extortion regarding the photos and stuff like that. And whether they have them or they don't have them, chances are if you've sent them the photos, definitely get law enforcement involved sooner rather than later regarding that. The other scam that I think that I would touch on that we're seeing a lot with regards to our college age kids right now is the jury duty, missed jury duty, where they're getting calls claiming to be from law enforcement. Law enforcement is never going to call you to let you know that you missed jury duty. And we're never going to call you to say you have a warrant out for your arrest for missing jury duty. Law enforcement is also never going to ask you for money in reference to the fact that you missed jury duty, and the only way to avoid getting arrested is to send us money. Law enforcement does not ever do that. So if you do get those phone calls, definitely hang up on those individuals. They are not really law enforcement.
Believe it or not, I actually know someone personally who fell victim to a JEA scam. This individual got a phone call saying, hey, we're going to shut your lights off. And unfortunately, he did hand over money. Thankfully, he didn't hand over money that he couldn't afford to lose. But it was a hard lesson learned. It just goes to show you, once again, it's law enforcement, but also other agencies here that can be used in this deadly, terrible game that people are playing. So I want to talk also about resources. They're out there. People may not know they're out there, though. Can we touch on the really good ones where people can go and, get information to help themselves and their families?
So one of them is Operation Level Up. This is FBI. Secret Service has been involved with this as well. And it's really focused on the cryptocurrency investment fraud, where we're trying to proactively identify victims, individuals who are falling, victim to these scams. And at times we'll reach out, law enforcement will reach out, once we identify a victim, reach out and say, hey, I think you're falling victim to this scam. Here are some things, here are some resources. And at times there's pushback. Sometimes maybe they think that they know the individual. They don't even realize that they are being victimized. I would encourage, if you can just Google FBI Operation Level Up, and it'll take you to the website. There's a lot of resources, a lot of tips there where it shows you, hey, what red flags are, what to look out for. It's things the conversations you can have with friends and family to get smart on these issues, and hopefully prevent either current, ongoing, or future scammers targeting you. So I would encourage that. The other one is the IC3.gov, which I already mentioned, that also has a lot of information on their resources. So just 2 websites, you can go straight to those and pull that up.
AARP has a scam tracker as well that they put up. It's not just targeted at elderly population, so it's a good read, good information. And the Better Business Bureau also puts out good information about scams that they're seeing more frequently. And then we've got Operation Shamrock, which I'll let you talk about.
So Operation Shamrock is a website that was created from a former prosecutor, just to where it's like basically anybody that's involved in like the crypto scams and things like that. It's a great resource for victims to go to in reference to victim support, education. Things are also reported there. They will click on the things that show you on their website that help you out with a scam that they're seeing now. You can also report it to that website. It's also a great resource. I will also say that the postal website is also a great resource in the things that they're dealing with regards to like the mail theft and things like that. And the last thing that I would even say in reference to that, if you're ever in doubt, call your local law enforcement. We will tell you if it's a scam. Chances are we already know about it, and if not, we could always find out for you. So definitely reach out to us if there's ever any questions and what you have or what's going on. If you truly do not know, definitely call us.
Can I add one thing?
Of course, please.
Bank tellers. Trust your bank tellers and the bank managers at your financial institutions. They are trained and will ask questions. A lot of the times the scammers will direct you to lie to the bank tellers or the bank managers about what you're doing with the money you're withdrawing. If you're honest with the bank tellers, they will help you not lose your money. If they're asking questions, they're asking for a reason. They believe that you're probably a victim of a scam, and they're attempting to help you. So trust your bank tellers, your bank employees.
And we've seen them like on videos on the internet. We've seen that they're on it. They are really, really on it. They're paying attention and they want to help you. I do think it's important not just for potential victims to know what to look out for, but also family members of potential victims. We care for our families, we care for our loved ones. We don't want to see people we care about scammed. So is there any information and red flags that family members can have, neighbors can have? Is anybody want to weigh in on that?
I think a lot of times pride and shame befalls a lot of, especially with our older community, to where they're very tight-lipped about their finances. It's like I said, a lot of time it's a pride thing. They don't want their family to worry about money or know what's going on with their money. And a lot of times what I see from my end is a lot of the victims, when they do realize that they're losing money and that they are a victim, they don't want to alert their family of it. And by that time, all the money's gone. Even with bank tellers, they'll convince the bank teller through what the scammer told them to say. The bank will release the funds to them, and then the funds are gone. So especially, as we age, we don't have to have them sign any releases or anything or co-sign on any accounts, but definitely have an open conversation with your children, with your parents, especially as they age, because they're typically going to be a little more trusting and not up to date on the current scams and all that, and just kind of keep a finger on the pulse of what they're doing with their money. If they're struggling to pay any bills, that could be a sign that that maybe the money's not there. Any unusual changes, if they're going to the bank a lot more than usual, and obviously if they get to a certain point where they need to have a power of attorney, that's another avenue that some families have to explore to prevent all the money from being scammed out of the victim. So, I would say just an open line of communication with all your relatives, especially neighbors, that may not have family, to watch out for them. But just look for any red signs or red flags that there's a problem with finances or with the way they handle their money.
Yeah. I think I would add too, just you keep that open line of communication with them, and then look for any change in behavior. If they appear to be more detached or trying to conceal communications that they're having, these scammers want their victims to keep everything private, keep everything secret. So Keep the communication going with your family members and changes in behavior to where you think, they're keeping something from me. Dig into it a little bit more and see if you can find out what it might be.
I would check on them regularly. The biggest thing I think with our elderly community is the fact that they just get lonely. And I would say that if able, try to get them involved in things locally, to get them out and about more, so where they're not using the computer to basically engage in these type of things, just to have interaction with people. Check on them as often as you can. With regards to our, not just our elderly, but any of us regarding our ages, is the fact that when it comes to like your banking accounts and things like that, make sure you guys are setting up really strong passwords. Do not duplicate passwords. Technology's gotten so good in the fact that your phone will even generate a difficult password for you, so you don't even have to remember it. But always set up two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication on everything that you have, especially when it comes to banking and things like that, because that will help being able to allow someone else into those accounts. That would be one of the other things that I would add.
I actually have a story of my own with that. A two-factor authentication actually prevented me from having my Facebook taken over. So I can, that's what saved me, and that was just a social media thing. But when you talk about banking, it can truly be detrimental. So does anybody have anything else they want to talk about in terms of protecting yourself or someone you care about from fraud? Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
We have to mention the pop-up scams on computers.
Yeah.
This one's so crazy, you're going to think I'm making it up. But people find a pop-up, and I'll be quick. They find a pop-up on their computer. They call a number, and the person they talk to allege that they have illegal images, usually child pornography, on their device, or that they're laundering money for cartels or what have you. And they say they have to separate their assets from their social security number. They're directed over time to go to their bank and empty every account they have into cash. And then they're advised to put the cash in a shoebox on their front porch, and a courier will pick it up, take it to Washington, D.C., and put it in a lockbox for safekeeping. And when their social security number is cleared of any wrongdoing, they will get those funds back.
Wow.
No one should ever be putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash or gold bars on their front porch for someone to pick up. That is the most outrageous scam I've seen to this date, is just people putting gold bars and shoe boxes on the front porch for someone to come and retrieve. And it's gone. It goes back to us having a hard time recovering assets once they leave. So just keep your money where it is.
I would say be careful even about the tech support scams with regards to Microsoft or the Norton antivirus, things like that. We're still seeing those as well at JSO. Definitely don't click on any of those things. If they tell you that it's an active spyware, they found a virus on your computer, call someone else, a local company that can actually look into your computer instead of relying on somebody else. Because once you give them access to your computer, you're pretty much giving them access to everything that you have on your computer, to include your banking, your emails, all of that stuff. I would also lastly like to say for Adam, if he doesn't mind touching on some of the things with regards to postal and the things that they see this time of year.
What we typically see around the holidays, and it's pretty much year round, is mail being targeted for theft as it relates to checks, commercial checks, personal checks. There's a whole subculture right now. You can kind of think of check washing kind of as something from the early 1900s, but we're seeing young groups, gangs that are involved in financial crimes that target the checks that you're mailing, the checks that are being mailed to you, the cluster boxes, the collection boxes, the boxes at the end of your driveway, driving through in broad daylight under the cover of darkness. We see a lot more around this time of year just due to the increase in volume. So yes, they're getting the cash, they're getting the gift cards that grandma is mailing, but their main target, those are all just additional perks of stealing, but they're targeting large commercial checks that are being mailed. They're then counterfeiting them, selling them on the dark web. So we'll have a check stolen here in Jacksonville that's counterfeited and uttered in California or Alaska, all over the country. So just a couple of quick tips regarding mail. If you're depositing mail, make sure it's before the final pickup for the day. Don't let it sit in a collection box overnight or a cluster box overnight. Same with residential mailboxes. If you can hand it to a postal employee, that's better. If you can bring it inside, that's best. Just safeguard your financial information. whether it's a check or documents that you're mailing to Bank of America that contain your, any of your personal identifiers that can be used to commit fraud. Just protect yourself. And like I was saying earlier about mitigation, just mitigate your, the less likely that you offer chances to become a victim, the less likely that you're going to suffer any financial loss because the information's out. So that game of back in the day trying to, prevent your information from being on the dark web, from being on the internet, that's long gone. Everybody's information is there. But the easier you make it now, going forward with simple tasks, they have to work harder. So they're going to go to the next victim.
Understood. Did you want to weigh in on anything?
Yeah, I think just be careful. Take a pause anytime somebody asks for money, right? That's just good advice, regardless of what situation you're in. Make sure it's real. That's a major red flag. If you think you're talking to somebody, just verify, confirm, talk with friends and family, and take a break anytime somebody's asking for money. Try to protect yourself, try to protect your friends and family, and have those conversations. Be careful. Anytime you get a link in an email or a text message, don't click on it. That's other good advice. There's a lot of malicious links that are out there that could get you involved in it, and get you involved in some of these scams.
I would say the one thing I would add at some point in this podcast is the fact that if anybody is asked to go to a crypto ATM in Jacksonville, do not go. Chances are you're sending that money to a suspect. It's not for anything legitimate. So definitely do not go to any crypto ATM, no matter who asks you to go.
I would encourage people to be familiar with what they own and what they use, whatever systems, whether it be software, apps. Obviously, don't download apps that they're not familiar with. No apps should be asking, unless they're banking apps, should be asking for any PII, such as your social or anything like that. So Taco Bell, you should not be entering, any of that information in. Also permissions, when apps ask for permission for access to your contact list, or, sometimes that's the end. If you say no to that, releasing that information, the app won't let you continue. So you got to balance out the benefit of having that app on your phone and what information you're sharing with it. So a lot of times, Google Play, the Apple Store, it'll say it's verified, so just be cautious of what apps you download, even if it supposedly is going to make your life super simple. Always vet that before you open it, download it, share any information on it, things like that.
Yeah, I would just add to install the latest software updates. Right. So our entire lives are on our phones now, it seems, all that information. And as those software updates come in, they prevent these little vulnerabilities that are found. So put those updates on there, keep your phone safe from individuals who are trying to hack in or get access to your information.
And I know it's not always possible for everybody, but if possible, if you have separate home computers, don't log on to the internet on the same one you're checking all your banking and stuff on. Have separate computers for that if it's possible.
Yeah, and the multi-factor authentication is big, whether it's a phone or a computer. That authenticates to either a token on the device or the device itself. It calls and sends you a text message, something to that effect. Even if somebody steals your phone and is able to get into your phone through the passcodes, that's still an added layer that they're kind of like we're talking about. They're going to move on to the next person. They don't want to have to work too hard to be able to victimize people.
But if you do lose your device, I would go in and change the because everybody saves their passwords on their phones nowadays, or they have the face set up. I would tell everybody to go there and change all their passwords on what you have that's on your actual device, just to be on the safe side.
And notify anywhere you have money, any credit card companies, notify them immediately, if they're, especially if the device was used to access those accounts, just as a safety precaution.
Okay, I think it's been a really great discussion. We really appreciate your time and your expertise in sharing this with our viewers and listeners at home. So we thank you all so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for watching this episode of Inside JSO. As always, be safe.